Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's wonderful to be here with you again this week. This week, we will begin the reading of Masaaki-sama's sacred word, Meishu-sama's journey to become the Messiah, delivered in May 2022. In this sacred word, as Masaaki-sama says, he shares with us what we should know, what we must accept, and also the kind of resolve that we should have as we approach the service. In this case, the grand ceremony to celebrate the birth of the Messiah. With that, we go into the state of mind of Meishu-sama when he came down with the symptoms of a brain hemorrhage. And we get to see who Meishu-sama really is. This is a really special reading this week as we are being allowed to perceive Meishu-sama for who he really was. Through these sacred words, I've come to see that for a long time I carried an image of Meishu-sama that's not who Meishu-sama was. And this is vital as we seek to truly follow Meishu-sama and be born anew as children of God, Messiahs, as we will see in the sacred word Masaaki-sama sharing with us. I'm really looking forward to reading this sacred word with you and receiving this truth of Meishu-sama through the holy seat of Kyoshu, through Kyoshu-sama's sacred words and Masaaki-sama's sacred words. So stay tuned as we begin our reading right after this. So everyone, let us, in the name of Messiah, which is one with Meishu-sama, one with Jesus Christ, acknowledge that through the atoning blood of Christ, we were forgiven and saved. And through this forgiveness of God, let us at this moment return to heaven that exists within us. And together with our ancestors, together with all creation that are alive within us, receive this sacred word that we are about to read today. So with that thought in mind, I like to begin our study today. Church Canon. With great fear of God, we acknowledge that the Lord God is our true Father, the one and only God. We revere Meishu-sama as the model for all humanity and as our own example to follow. Meishu-sama, who was born anew as a true child of God, the Messiah, by receiving the divine will that God accomplished in heaven. We believe that Jesus Christ, who 2,000 years ago embodied the name of Messiah, the name most holy and high, is serving the Lord God in unity with Meishu-sama. And we regard the sacred word of Kyoshu-sama, who reveals to us the will of Meishu-sama in this material world, as the sole, absolute, an irreplaceable foundation in advancing our mission here on earth. Words of prayer. God, I acknowledge that you are alive. Within me, you are alive. I thank you for nurturing me to be newly born as your child. May this blessing be shared with all. In the name of Messiah, which is one with Meishu-sama, I surrender myself to you. Please use me as you wish. So thank you, everybody. Beginning our study, as in every week, we choose a post or two from Instagram. And today I chose one post from Instagram, and it comes from Kyoshu-sama's hymns for August 2023. And in this hymn, Kyoshu-sama shares with us the following. Without even noticing it, I turned into someone who lives their life according to their own criteria of likes and dislikes, or of good and evil. I think this is really important for us to reflect on, right? To look at our lives. Is this not how we've lived and how we live our lives? based on our own criteria of what we like, what we don't like, what we think is good, what we think is evil. And today we are being nurtured to truly how one must live, how to truly live in accordance with God's will. And of course, it's not this way of living anymore, is it? And I like for us to keep this in mind as we receive the sacred word of Masaaki-sama today. The sacred word entitled Meishu-sama's journey to become the Messiah. I think this is very important, right? As we can uh, reflect even how we receive this truth of Meishu-sama through Masaaki-sama. Is it based on our likes and dislikes, on our criteria of good and evil? It's a great way for a self-check as we're reading this today, I believe. So with that in mind, without further ado, I'd like to begin the reading with you right now. Hello, everyone. Today, it was forecasted to rain in the afternoon, but it seems to have started earlier. Despite that, and also being in the middle of Golden Week, thank you for gathering today in the presence of Kyoshu-sama. Editorial note: in Japan, Golden Week is a week containing multiple national holidays at the end of April and the beginning of May, during which many people take a long break. Now, we have exactly a month and a half left until the grand ceremony to celebrate the birth of the Messiah. Today is the last time before the grand ceremony that I can convey my thoughts to all of you like this. So together, I would like to check off a few things before the day of the ceremony, like things we should know, what we must accept, and also the kind of resolve we should have as we approach the day of the service. I would like to welcome the day of the grand ceremony to celebrate the birth of the Messiah truly without any regrets, together with all of you. And so today, what I would like to talk about is Meishu-sama's brain hemorrhage. The year before he ascended, Meishu-sama came down with the symptoms of a brain hemorrhage. What was his state of mind after that? This is what I would like to look at with all of you today. Just a quick pause here, right? Because this is a really special opportunity for us to truly get to know Meishu-sama, right? I believe many of us have heard of Meishu-sama's brain hemorrhage. We heard that Meishu-sama went through this, right? But what was going through Meishu-sama's mind, right? What was that process within Meishu-sama during that? And today we are being privileged to receive this through Masaaki-sama's sacred word. So pay close attention because this is really, really important for us as well. He continues. This brain hemorrhage occurred 68 years ago on April 19th, 1954. Today is May 1st, so it is just about 68 years. According to records, around 4 p.m., and it seems that it was while Meishu-sama was taking a walk, he suddenly fell ill. Understandably, at that time, he did not go to the hospital, so based on the symptoms and such, it was believed to be a hemorrhagic stroke, and he could not move his right hand or leg at all. This was the situation that emerged. Immediately after, the church publications, Glory and Heaven on Earth, were suspended. I heard that even the materials that were already sent to the press were pulled back, so you can imagine the gravity of the matter. For us left here now, the church continues to exist like normal, so it may be difficult to get a real sense of the crisis. But for the two church publications to be called off for a while was definitely a crisis. Meanwhile, what was Meishu-sama going through? According to records, 3 days after he fell ill, on April 22nd, after his evening meal, he felt an immense joy and had an assistant call his wife, Nidai-sama. She came, and there the two of them cried out of great joy. It seemed that he could move his right leg somewhat, but he could not move his right hand at all. This situation had not changed. Usually, this is not often a factor that brings joy, but Meishu-sama said that he was happy beyond words. Nidai-sama was so happy with the way he was and joined Meishu-sama in crying tears of joy. This was on April 22nd, 3 days after the brain hemorrhage. And then, on the next day, the night of the 23rd, Meishu-sama went to bed, but his head hurt and he couldn't sleep, waking up around 2 a.m. Regardless of not getting much rest, he rose the next morning on the 24th, around 6 a.m. He went out to the garden, very likely in a wheelchair, and what he said at the time was, "It's the morning of hope." He said, "It's the morning of hope." Then Meishu-sama said that because it was after his plans for the time being were more or less finished, it was the perfect time to rest. He said, "How considerate God is." Now remember, his right hand could still hardly move. In this situation, he said those things. This was April 24th. The next day, on April 25th, he recorded his sacred word on audio. And I think there were some of you who know about it. There's well-known recording from June 5th, but there's also this shorter one from April 25th, whose words still exist today as an official record. He said that it came suddenly, and he was confused. He also said that it was an extremely mysterious illness. But in the church publication, illness was changed to purification. An extremely mysterious purification. Meishu-sama had originally said an extremely mysterious illness. And he said that this illness was a good thing and not bad by any means. This was on April 25th. Then, in another separate account, a week had not yet passed since the brain hemorrhage occurred, and it was recorded that Meishu-sama's becoming ill like this was such an immeasurable blessing that he cried hard out of joy. He said that had been things that made him happy until then, but this time, the happiness I feel is beyond words, and he cried hard. There are those of you who are aware of the episode where Meishu-sama cried after his brain hemorrhage, which is also written in Meishu-sama's biography, Light from the East. He cried from knowing that God was the one who was the most saddened about the destruction of humanity. We know about these tears, but you probably didn't know about the tears that Meishu-sama cried out of joy within about a week after the brain hemorrhage. Just making a quick pause, right? This is also was very new for me, right? I knew about this episode regarding Meishu-sama's tears and the sadness of God regarding the destruction of humanity. That one I was very well aware of, but this tears of joy that Masaaki-sama is sharing with us today was very new for me. But it is recorded as Masaaki-sama is sharing with us here, right? And this happened within about a week after the brain hemorrhage. And Masaaki-sama continues. Next, about a month after April 19th, 31 days after, On the May 20th, there was an episode where Meishu-sama went to Izu-san's shrine for Omiyamairi, as he was born anew. Editorial note: Omiyamairi is a traditional custom in Japan where a newborn baby is brought to a local shrine for the first time and their birth reported through prayer. On his way to the shrine, it became difficult for him to continue. So in the end, he had an attendant go in his stead. Meishu-sama does not consider his being born anew a made-up story, does he? I mean, an actual prayer to report his birth was done at Izu-san's shrine. This happened on May 20th. I knew about these episodes, these facts. So from them, I had a picture in my mind about who Meishu-sama was. Normally, if the right side of the body suddenly becomes immobile, it would be cause for panic, wouldn't it? Maybe after a month or two, once things calm down a little, I can imagine us reflecting and maybe thinking something like, ah, this illness was for something good. But for Meishu-sama, only a few days after the symptoms of the brain hemorrhage began, he felt that. At the time, Meishu-sama was joyful, saying that this was a great blessing from God. So until now, I understood Meishu-sama as an exceptional existence. On our end, when we go through something difficult, we think it is impossible to have the same mindset as Meishu-sama. So when we bow in reverence to the divine image of Meishu-sama, we believe it is important to receive this exceptional existence of Meishu-sama into our hearts. This is how I understood it. Just making a quick pause, right? Isn't this the truth for all of us? I mean, this is how I understood, and this is the image I had of Meishu-sama, right? Given all this that was going on, Meishu-sama could feel this joy. Meishu-sama could feel this gratitude. Meishu-sama was exceptional, right? Different from us, where for us it might take weeks, months, or even years to get to that point and look back at a problem, a situation, and say what a blessing it was. Meishu-sama was able to do it within days. So Meishu-sama must be this extraordinary being, right? I too carried this image of Meishu-sama until receiving the sacred words from Masaaki-sama. Look what Masaaki-sama shares with us. But something made me take a second look at this image of Meishu-sama I had in my head. It was the fact that this discipline Meishu-sama underwent to be born anew as the Messiah was so painful that he even thought of committing suicide repeatedly. Everyone, he thought about suicide. Meishu-sama thought about it repeatedly. Meishu-sama spoke about this suicide the year after his brain hemorrhage, around the new year in 1955. I'll say it again. Meishu-sama said that the discipline he underwent to be born anew as the Messiah was so painful that he repeatedly thought of suicide. This episode had been in my head until now. I knew about it, but recently I was made to think. As I thought about the Meishu-sama who was suffering so much that he wanted to commit suicide, I was starting to get a sense of a genuine Meishu-sama, so to speak, different from the one I spoke about just now, different from the exceptional Meishu-sama I spoke about just now. I was starting to see the real Meishu-sama. Everyone, this is huge, right? This is really something for us to stop and reflect. Don't we want to get to know this genuine Meishu-sama, as Masaaki-sama puts here, so to speak, right? Not this exceptional image of Meishu-sama that we had, but who Meishu-sama truly was, what really went through Meishu-sama's mind, what Meishu-sama really experienced, and why. And this is so important for us. So Masaaki-sama continues here. What do I mean by this? To commit suicide means to feel hopelessness, the feeling of desperation. Meishu-sama's wanting to commit suicide means that he was thrown into despair, doesn't it? Who of us watching right now ever thought that Meishu-sama, at this point in his life serving God, was feeling this despair, this hopelessness to the point of wanting to commit suicide? For a long time, I had this image of Meishu-sama before he started on this path of faith, right? After he had all those illnesses and lost so much, and he started seeking God. But Meishu-sama, in 1954, upon having his stroke, had these thoughts of suicide. As Masaaki-sama shares here, this feeling of hopelessness. This is huge, right? This changes the way we see Meishu-sama, does it not? And look what Masaaki-sama shares with us. Although Meishu-sama said it's the morning of hope, on the 6th day after he came down with the symptoms of a brain hemorrhage, the truth is, the night before, he could not sleep due to the pain in his head, and his hand wouldn't move. In this situation, I think Meishu-sama was actually in despair. For Meishu-sama to think about committing suicide repeatedly means that at some point he was in despair. When was that? It must have been when he could not sleep because of pain, when his hand wouldn't move. He must have experienced the feeling of hopelessness and despair to the verge of wanting to die. And literally, at that point, God asked Meishu-sama, is your current situation one of despair, or is it a hope? I gave you these circumstances. Will you give into despair or look up in hope? Which one will you choose? When asked these questions, Meishu-sama must have been feeling hopelessness in his heart. But since he taught about purification, even in the middle of his despair, he must have said to God in response, no, this is not a situation to despair over. It is one of hope. That's why he said, it's the morning of hope. That's what I think. Or what about the way Meishu-sama said, how considerate God is, as the purification came after his plan had come to a close? Was it really like that? He could have been thinking that his plans hadn't been completed and the purification came at the worst timing. Maybe he wanted to do this or do that and had future plans. He could have thought it was the worst timing ever. Then Meishu-sama was asked by God, I gave you this blessing of a brain hemorrhage. Do you think this is coming at the worst time? Or is it coming at the perfect time? Which one is it? To this, Meishu-sama must have reported back to God, ah, God, truly this is the perfect time. I think he shows this to us by having said how considerate God is. Meishu-sama also said that his illness was a good thing and not bad by any means. In this case too, he first must have been asked by God, do you think this brain hemorrhage is a good thing or a bad thing? Which one? Meishu-sama wanted to commit suicide. He felt hopelessness. Normally, with this mental attitude, everything just seems bad. But Meishu-sama was asked by God if he thought the brain hemorrhage was a good thing or a bad thing. Meishu-sama must have replied, this is not a bad thing at all, God. This is a good thing. Just a moment ago, I spoke to you about the time after Meishu-sama developed the symptoms of the brain hemorrhage, how he felt a joy he hadn't experienced before, the joy that made him cry very hard. Rather than saying it was Meishu-sama's joy, I say it was God's. God who loved Meishu-sama, his son. What do I mean by that? God gave Meishu-sama an illness of a brain hemorrhage. Receiving this illness, Meishu-sama was thrown into despair. But then he overcame this despair and responded to God, oh God, this is not something to lose hope over. Rather, this illness is a hope. At first, I thought, why now? But actually, you gave me this illness at the perfect time. Oh God, this illness is not a bad thing. It is a good thing. I believe Meishu-sama responded to God in this way when he received his illness. How happy God must have been. How about us? When something inconvenient happens to us, we usually think, why now? This is so bad, don't we? But who can deny that it is God who makes all those inconvenient things occur? That is, when something bad happens, if we can respond to God by saying, oh God, this came at the perfect time. You are so considerate, oh God. This purification is cause for joy and hope. What I am receiving is a hope, oh God. God will be happy for sure. God is our parent, so he does good things for us and good things only, even though various things may appear bad in our eyes. So I believe that as the parent, God was truly happy about Meishu-sama, his own child, receiving God's paternal love, even though Meishu-sama was in great pain. Even in this world, in the case where a parent has to do something out of necessity for the child he or she loves, even though it is painful, and then the child responds with, Dad, Mom, thank you, the parent would be really happy, right? As such, God who exists within Meishu-sama became very happy about Meishu-sama's accepting his paternal love. In turn, Meishu-sama felt God's joy and became happy too. I believe this is what led him to the state of mind that made him cry so hard out of joy and to say that the happiness he felt was beyond words. The grand ceremony to celebrate the birth of the Messiah is about truly having Meishu-sama as our model from here on. But even though we say that we will have Meishu-sama, who was born anew as the Messiah, as our model, and that we aim to be born anew, our actual thoughts are more like, we probably won't even reach that point anyway. Or Meishu-sama was a man of greatness, chosen by God, and we are very far from that. If these are our true inner feelings, then the sincere efforts Meishu-sama made for God within his heart that I was just talking about until now will be all for nothing. If we end up with the thinking that only Meishu-sama was special and that's why he was able to think that way, then it's all for nothing. Meishu-sama is someone who fully knows and has gone through heartache and suffering. That's why he understands our suffering, sorrows, and despairs, right? When you say follow Meishu-sama's example, what exactly is the image of Meishu-sama that you have? If you make Meishu-sama a special existence, raise him up as an idol, and say, my aim is to be born anew, and that's my goal, as empty words only, then you will never reach that point. Meishu-sama is someone who has experienced similar pain and despair as us, and in particular, when he received the brain hemorrhage. But he believed that if God is love, then he would never drive me to despair. And then it said, it's the morning of hope. I believe he said this with the intention to profess his faith in God. So if we are to follow Meishu-sama's example, we must follow it 100%. Everyone, I'm going to take a pause here and stop our reading for this week. It's so powerful, so special, and it just makes us want to keep reading and go on, right? But I believe it's important for us to take a pause here and really reflect on who Meishu-sama was, as Masaaki-sama is sharing with us, right? Meishu-sama, who experienced what we experience, who went through feelings of hopelessness and despair. Not Meishu-sama, this idol that we created, who is unattainable and impossible to be like, right? And with this true image of Meishu-sama, like Meishu-sama, seek God's joy, seek God's happiness first. Even though we may be in the middle of a situation, some purification, some hard time that we are experiencing, let us, like Meishu-sama, acknowledge that God is love and he would never drive us through that despair, that he's doing it out of love to nurture us as his true children and express that gratitude to God, express that love to God. So it's with that thought in mind that I like to stop the study here today. I look forward to seeing you next week, and let us serve God with our heart, mind, soul, our body, the whole of ourselves. And may all honor, may all glory be returned to God always.